without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jessie's colleague and collaborator, Philipp Hummer, who some of you may know as the founder and designer of SPOTTERON. So Philipp, over to you.
Thank you very much. In this second part, we look a little bit on how to implement technology and building apps for citizen science. So to get a general basis, apps and applications online, they have common needs. They need to work on many devices, operating systems. There are different browser versions, and especially in the mobile world, there are many different types of devices, Android, iOS, different system operating versions, etc., etc. So to have a stable environment for citizen science apps, it's quite necessary to update apps all the time and roll out improvements. This changing environment, we know it all by heart. There are always new versions, new updates, and new phones coming out, etc. So this is very important for the compatibility on one hand, also when a project grows. It gets bigger and it has more performance issues, etc. It's also important for the security and the privacy and the stability of citizen science apps. So in a general saying, apps are never done. So, but we on this platform, we always think about the citizens and the users also, because we are citizen scientists ourselves and participate in many projects. So when considering users, we created here for this presentation these two persons. On one hand, Jane, and on the other hand, John. And Jane is very active in social media platforms, for example. She stays up to date in her apps and she loves to interact with other people. John, on the other hand, blogs about his garden on his personal blog. He uses messenger apps daily and he loves hiking and uses map apps. So these are general needs we have when considering these traits of person using smartphone apps. So when we translate that to citizen scientists, to citizen science apps, and just as an example, for the social connection, Jane wants to share her contributions online. For staying up to date, she needs to have a community newsfeed and gets notifications by the citizen science app. And for exchange, she needs to comment and have possibilities for user interaction or with interaction with the project itself. For John, with his own personal blog, he loves to, for example, create a map with his own personal data. While he uses messenger apps on a daily basis, he's very used to put in emojis. And this is also a feature of citizen science apps, which can be important for motivation. And also when you're being on a hike or being outdoors, the offline mode and the map area download is an important thing because you don't have always an internet connection there. So when considering this, what we do on SPOTTERON is a modular platform approach, and these features are kind of puzzle pieces for citizen science apps. This means features come together and create a common greater picture. It starts from the login, it goes over to contributing data in a questionnaire, it goes to the offline mode, commenting, etc., etc. In general speaking, in a few of technologies, these puzzle parts, these tiny pieces can be shared between projects in a common digital environment. And this is in general how a platform of citizen science works. We call this the feature ecosystem, where one project, for example, funds an extension, a new feature, and then all other projects get that without extra development costs. So for the second, or for a better view of this, we prepared a little bit of a live hands-on part. I hope that works actually. If you want to follow along or take a look at what we show later, here are 3 apps I selected running on the platform. It's on one hand Groundwater for hydrology and water observations. There's Nature's Calendar. It's about phenology, climate change research, and general nature spotting. And there is the German project Land auf, Land ab. It's about history and local heritage. And I will show you just in a second or in a minute. And below there is a login if you want to if you don't want to register. So one example I would like to share and want to show is the spot update feature. This enables chronological timelines in citizen science apps. So we often have this need for this feature in different kind of projects when users can create existing observations, but they can add additional attributes or additional observations to the same object or to the same location. So this feature was funded by Nature's Calendar, and it's used in phenology to update phenological phases, for example, of the apple tree in your garden. And it's also then, it has been adopted by other projects in different approaches, which I wanted to show to you. So I hope that works actually. We are here running real Android devices on a virtual machine on our workstation. And these are real smartphones. They're just running on a computer here. And on the left side, you can see nature's calendar and then groundwater and then Land auf, Land ab, which is kind of difficult to pronounce. So when I take a look here at the feature we just did look at, the spot update feature, I just go to my personal profile because I'm also active in the Citizen Science app. And here you can see, for example, what I mentioned before with Jane. She likes to stay up to date. So there's a news feed with the people I am connected with in the app, and I see their activities, comments, and likes. But I go now to the spot section here of my own personal spots, and I jump over to this beautiful tree, which is just around the corner of our office. And it's a Kugeltrompetenbaum. I don't know what the English species name is for that. What I do, I go by almost every week or every 2 weeks, and then I snap a photo of it. And here you can see how the spot update feature is important for phenology. So you see the phases of the tree from winter to spring to summer, and you can see how the leaves grow, and you can see how it changes over time. In Crowdwater, which is about hydrology, it's a different approach. They use the same feature, and I filter here just for the spots with many updates. So they use the same feature, for example, this spot, and it zooms in now. So the first user puts in a virtual scale on a map, and then other users can update it with their own measurements. And what they create are, again, these measurement timelines. But here, because it's about numeric values, we can also create statistics out of it. For example, here, a water level. It's the same feature with an attachment. And on the third example, here is Land auf, Land ab. As said before, it's about cultural heritage. And I filter again just for the main spots which they put up. They use the feature in a very different way. They created spots when launching the project with historical photographs and made a whole contest out of it and inviting users to take the same picture in current time. And they blogged about it. They had this wonderful screens where you can move a slider in between and see the two different stages. And it was a very successful approach to that. So what we see here is that one feature developed for one project does not need to be just for the one project. You don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. And also from a user's perspective, that's very important because by creating such an approach, then you can collaborative create new features over time and extend the current citizen science apps with new functionalities and new parts of it. There are many examples here, what we do on our platform. Here, for example, are leaderboards, or there are statistics about the data which has been contributed by the users. And also, for example, there are timelines available for which is more visually, for sure, in species-related apps, in monitoring, or here in phenology-related citizen science, where you can see how different species and their phases are distributed over a year, for example. So to jump a little bit back here, in general, I need to go back to the presentation. Yeah, that should work now again. From our point of view and our experience, also as citizen scientists, it would be so cool that if citizen science can reach out very broadly. And by that, it can have a really big impact, not only about data collection, but also in immersement and engaging people on a general basis. It can create communities, topic-related communities, where people of the same interest can come together, exchange via, for example, a communication feature, like a commenting function or a social approach inside the apps. And by that, it can really be a part of our lives. So technologies, by implementing that matters how people can also start on with citizen science. If they are feeling welcome and if they are a part of something bigger and not alone in just the app. So it matters also, I think, for the impact of citizen science on a broader scale, if there's the possibility to engage people on such a deeper basis. Okay, thank you very much. I hope that was not too quick, and I don't know what the time actually is because I didn't have the timer on, but there are questions, and filling the time with questions is also always a good approach.
Thank you, Philip. We'll probably invite Jessie as well to come in because there's a number of questions for both of you. And what's great about this whole workshop is from IoT and urban sort of settings to natural infrastructures and platform design. We have it all. So I think there's some preliminary questions that came to you, Jessie. For instance, can you share your uh, reference to your papers? Um,
Yes, I will do that. If
and
you guys can hang into the chat for a minute, I'll just send you my ORCID ID. That's probably the easiest way to find them. But I did see that other people, my stuff is on ResearchGate if you use that. And I tweet like a madwoman, so that's another way to find them.
wonderful. Now you've had a bit of a following, I think, after your bird calls. So you're going to have quite a few compliments, I think, coming through the chat. But we have
Hilarious.
one question about lockdown and how many birders in the UK got into recording nocturnal migration calls of birds. So
Mm-hmm.
some got really into detective work about, what was that sound, and you can see it on this URL, nocmig.com, knockmig.com. So that's
Cool, I've copied that down. Thank you, Michael.
and another question. How do you see this work progressing for the next PhD student?
Ah, well, they're not gonna run with my work. I got plans for it. No, I need somebody to give me a giant bucket load of money so I can keep doing this rad research. But no, what I'd like to do and what I have already started actually, my final study is the one that I only just gave you guys a teaser of with the creativity with calls and gamification and playfulness and all that stuff. I'm in the thick of writing that right now. In fact, I'm going to try to submit it next week, so I should be writing. But, I love you guys. I had to be here. So, yeah, what I'd really like to do, I did a quantitative or qualitative study around some of that stuff, and I would really like to continue exploring how to actually implement it in an interaction sense. So, prototyping online and things like that. And I really want to help these bloody birds. I don't want it to just be designed for design's sake. So for me, being able to then extend that to scalable stuff would be the most amazing thing ever, but I need to find support to do that, which is very tricky. So we'll see.
Just following from that, Jessie, so there was a question also about a formal study maybe on the use of those metaphors. So you had, for instance, those soundscapes looking like different animals, like an emu, a call looking like an emu, for instance. Is that something you're thinking about?
Yeah, so the Rorschach idea that I came up with, I also did, and I didn't even mention it, but I did acoustic interpretation in a Rorschach'ian sense, if you will. And people needed examples of how birders already do that, so I gave them mnemonic devices that birders frequently use and elicited creativity that way. And it was super powerful, and I've never seen it done with audio. And a lot of people collect audio in projects like Frog ID in Australia that are quite successful, but in terms of analysis relative to camera trap image classification, the projects have fairly low participation, which isn't necessarily bad too. I just want to emphasize, but if you're trying to save a threatened species and the only solid way to find it is sound, then time is of the essence. So I want to see how we can figure out speeding this process up and getting people excited about a little brown bird. I mean, I picked it because I love it, and I've been involved with BirdLife Australia for a long time, but I'm weird like that.
Well, one of the other questions is actually also about imitating bird sounds, if I got it right. So I was wondering whether giving community members the clue on the home range of the birds does not bias them. So you've got another follow-up question on that about any tendency for people to be biased in their misidentifications of similar sounding species.
Probably, and that's something that we should definitely tease apart. And I just want to emphasize too, a lot of people ask me, why don't you just do a Shazam for birds and just cut the people out of it. But even camera trap images are really hard to do that with. You can, depending on things, but sound is so much more difficult for so many different reasons. And I won't get into that now, but still, even if we can use AI to narrow down how much data has to be reviewed, then if we could put what's left in a really fun, creative way, that's not just really boring looking at spectrograms. I've done it for like a year now. It's really boring. But we can make it fun. It doesn't have to be. So that's kind of my goal. And I think that, yeah, there's lots of ways to do that I'm writing up right now. But it's a learning process. I think often in citizen science, we don't actually design for learning very often. It's and you asked about biasing data. It's about getting people excited about learning about birds first. So giving them the distribution maps actually got the novices the most excited because they'd never seen them before. And then, scaffolding the way that you introduce them to things so they can learn.
That's great, Jessie. Thank you. So question for Philip. Philip, there was a question about, is an API also part of the feature ecosystem?
Yes, it is. So we have API we provide an API for projects, and we also maintain that, which is kind of important if you have a platform and extend that all the time. And sometimes, for example, like in Crowdwater, it started with 3 categories and 3 observation options, and now I think there are 6. So this is also a part which we take care of, and there is the API to be used. And it's used, for example, in Crowdwater with on our website, crowdwater.ch. And they have a statistics tool there, which is built by them on basis of the API, for example. But it's also used for automatic data exchange.
Great. Jessie, we can just put your mute on for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So, Philip, another question. Wondering, this audience member was wondering if SPOTTERON is based on OpenStreetMaps or Google Maps. Is there any dependency on using the cartography?
This is a very good question because it taps also into user privacy. When you use free services, free on the internet, then you'll normally pay with your participants' data. And that is something we don't do on SPOTTERON. We have this digital ethics that we don't want to give personal data away to big mega corporations. So the data or the map data in general is based on OpenStreetMap, but we run our own map servers for that too. Because on OpenStreetMap, on one hand, it's not like you can just use it for free in general. They tolerate that usage, but up to a level. And on the second hand, it's not able, for example, to provide map download functionality with implementing OpenStreetMap in a citizen science app. So in this case, we run our own map servers, but with these providers like Mapbox, MapTiler, etc., all the map data is based on OpenStreetMap, but rendered on own servers with own styles.
That's great, Philip. Thank you. And you've got another question about, are you able to monitor which features are most popular with users?
No, because we don't track users. We have no Google Analytics inside the smartphone apps, or mobile analytics as it's called. We do not track, we don't know where they click, where they are, we don't monitor this, just because to protect the personal data and the privacy of users. I think that's very important to consider when running citizen science apps. It's not like a next social media channel with advertising. It's citizen science, and in my personal opinion at least, and as a citizen scientist, it should have this ethics. And we don't track the users, but there is for sure adoption rates visible when there are features for data contribution. So when, for example, a project launches a new feature like now CoastSnap for AI analysis of taking photographs of beaches to analyze coastal resilience, then you can see if the users use the feature in the data. And also the amount of contributions you can measure by just looking at the amount of contributions in the app, or the amount of participation, sorry.
That's great, Philip. There was another question related, not dissimilar, about including data from external APIs. Can you also include data from external APIs?
Yeah, we do that in a prototype now. This is not yet live. For example, in one project about climate watching, it's called Climate Watch. We are implementing data from OpenSenseMap. So OpenSenseMap are these, I'm sure you know it is the sense boxes which you can build by yourself at home, do-it-yourself sensoring, and all the OpenSenseMap boxes go onto opensensemap.org, and they have an API which we integrate as data points also in the app and match that with contributions. On the second view, we are part of a research project about implementing satellite data from the Sentinel satellites directly as visualizations in the applications, and there's the upcoming data visualization overlay, as we call it. So these parts are all based on external APIs, and it's quite flexible. With an API, you can do so many things.
Thanks, Philip. So there's now a question for both of you about, in your experience, what technological features are better for creating communities? For example, a forum or a one-to-one chat.
I'm gonna say that it really depends on your community.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying before, I always look at the practices of the community. If I try to do something like Twitter with my birders, they don't use Twitter. It's not gonna work, right? Some of them use Facebook, but only certain ones. So you really have to dive into understanding the practices of your community, I think.
Yeah, to tap in there are so many types of communities. Like on one hand, there is social media for sure, with a little bit this drawback of user monetization for sure, etc. But the question for me is always, where should the community be? If the community should be within your own toolkit, within your smartphone apps, citizen science apps, or on your homepage, there are so many common practices. If as a user, what do I need to have in a community as features? It's very simple in general. I need to be able to participate. So that means I need to be able to comment or to create posts. The second thing is what fosters communities is interaction. So this is why from Twitter to Facebook to anywhere, and also on SpotTeron, there is a feature where you can just simply with one tap like stuff. This is called normally an appreciation button. So you give a quick appreciation, and this creates frequency and activity. So the main, what is called the main trap is building a community which is not active. So when you, for example, launch a forum on your own website, which is a very easy way to do on open source content management systems, then you need also to maintain that activity. My best advice is be active as a project. So reply, post, share, and this is within your own community, within either the forum, the smartphone apps, if they have community features implemented, or somewhere else.
Yeah, I want to echo the feedback part of it is so important. Enabling people to have some sort of feedback with the people that are running the project. And the project managers really should take the time to do that because it really will increase capacity of your project.
Great. So we have about a minute or so for questions, and so this is addressed to Philip. What are the main approaches or methodologies that you use for designing the apps or deciding the new features? How deep are involved the users in that process?
Oh, that's a very good question. The process goes in general like that. We don't decide what features are inside the apps. We advise the project. Every project comes to us and says, hey, we need a citizen science app, and some of them have a development budget. So we can create new features for that development budget. The first step is by our, I need to calculate and I feel old now, by our 15, 20 years of experience we have now in design and online media, we advise for sure and work together in a co-created process with the project itself. If they are satisfied, if they are happy about the concept, then we build the feature. And this feature, again, is shared among all other projects and they can adopt it freely. So in the design approach, what we do, it really depends on what kind of feature it is for sure and how big it is. For small features, which are, for example, just on a technical level, you don't need a methodology or you don't need, let's put it better in that way, you don't need to do inquiries about that because it's clear what you do. Like, for example, building a sharing button which users can share stuff on online media. But on the other hand, there are projects where we create different use different approaches, like for example archetyping. I hope this is spelled correctly in English, where you create user archetypes and attach what we did actually before in the presentation a little bit, create user archetypes, go through their mindset, have a different view on that. We also do for bigger features sometimes A/B testing, which is very helpful to create two versions of it. It's more content related mostly because creating technical features, it takes time. There are many work hours put into that. So it really depends on how big the things are.
Thanks very much, Philip. Thank you, Jessie. Both fantastic presentations, and thank you to Martin and Achille as well. Those questions that haven't been answered, they will be provided to the speakers to respond to, and some of the contact details I think have already been provided. I want to thank you, all the attendees, for the terrific questions, and now you have the opportunity to transition to a Pilates session at 11:30. But once again, I'm going to give a virtual clap to our wonderful presenters today. And a very exciting session. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll be in the Zoom if anybody wants to ask questions, chatting.
Yeah. Good
Great.
point.
Or you can sing out on Twitter. Thank you.
Bye.